been portrayed either as the victim of Munchausen or the murderer.
Right.
And what do you want people to know about you?
Quite honestly, I'm starting to feel like they want a perfect victim, and there is no such thing as a perfect victim. In their mind, the perfect victim would have died. And so now that I survived and the perpetrator of the abuse is the one that died, then I'm getting the hate.
Gypsy Rose Blanchard's name has become synonymous with manipulation, tragedy, and controversy, but things have taken an even darker turn recently. While her story captivated the world from the tragic murder of her mother, Didi Blanchard, to her subsequent conviction, the narrative didn't end there. Gypsy's actions since her release from prison have left many wondering. Has she truly learned anything from her past, or has she simply grown more bold, more reckless? In today's video, we're diving into how Gypsy Rose has gone from being seen as a misunderstood victim to someone who seems to have lost all sense of accountability. Gypsy's latest actions, particularly her participation in a comedy show that mocked her mother's murder, have raised ethical and moral questions about where she stands now. Is this the same girl whose story we once sympathized with? Let's break it down.
First things first, we've got blonde hair, bronze skin, you're seemingly healed from your surgery. Is this the mark of a new era of Gypsy?
It is. I think that I'm entering into a new era in my life. Definitely having learned a lot about myself over these last 4 months. And I think that right now I'm just trying to move forward in my life and kind of showing who I am and discovering and in my pretty girl era, as they say.
Gypsy Rose attending a comedy show where her mother's death became part of the joke is quite frankly shocking. There is no other way to put it. The murder of Didi Blanchard was gruesome, calculated, and premeditated, an act that many justified due to the years of abuse Gypsy endured. But now, seeing Gypsy sitting in an audience while a comedian makes light of a very event that tore her family apart, it leaves you asking, where is the shame? Where is the accountability? It's one thing to be publicly scrutinized for your past actions, but to actively participate in making light of such a tragic event crosses the line. Ryan A. Rogers, the comedian in question, shared a photo with Gypsy and even used a hashtag like #MyFavoriteMurder. The choice of words in the post was beyond disturbing. By making jokes that trivialized her mother's gruesome death, the show didn't just entertain it, disrespected a life that was brutally taken. Even if Didi's actions towards Gypsy were cruel and abusive, there is a certain dignity that should remain around humans' death, especially when it involves a mother and daughter. What's worse is Gypsy's nonchalant participation, attending the show, posing for pictures, and allowing her mother's murder to be part of the joke makes you wonder if Gypsy has completely lost touch with reality. Her behavior in this instance suggests a complete loss of shame. Instead of being someone who reflects on her dark past and seeks a path of healing, Gypsy seems to be flaunting her notoriety in the most reckless and disturbing way. The question on one's mind is why? Why has Gypsy taken this path?
Now, y'all heard Gypsy Rose say that she was at a comedy show last night in Breeze Live. Ryan Rogers was the comedian, and he said he had the honor of performing at Gypsy Rose's first comedy show ever. And hashtag #MyFavoriteUnaliver.
But this is not going to end well. This is not going to be a good situation in any way, shape, or form.
Ryan A. Rogers may not be a well-known name in comedy, but his recent involvement with Gypsy Rose Blanchard has certainly put him in the spotlight, though not for the right reasons. By bringing Gypsy onto the stage and making her mother's murder the punchline of his jokes, Rogers crossed an ethical line that should never have been breached. His Instagram post, where he proudly shared a picture with Gypsy and referred to her appearance at the show as an honor, was already in bad taste. But when he added hashtags like true crime and my favorite murderer, it became clear that Rogers wasn't thinking about the ethical implication of his jokes. The backlash was swift and deserved. People were outraged that a comedian would reduce such a dark and sensitive event into a joke for entertainment. The real issue here is the effect this type of humor has on the broader public. It desensitizes people to real tragic events, turning murder into something to laugh at instead of reflect on. Rogers' attempt to use Gypsy's story as a way to get cheap laughs shows a lack of understanding about the gravity of her past, and it leaves us questioning his sense of responsibility as a performer.
Gypsy, anybody would have done it. Anybody in your position would have done it. And that's the thing that I was like, just like the plea deal, just like this opportunity, everything that you've done, everything that you've taken.
That my mother was just an evil person, and then that's not the case. She suffered from mental illness, so I don't think that she was ever purposely trying to be mean or hurt me. I think it was maybe something that it was out of her control. It is called a disease for a reason. It is called mental illness for a reason. So I want to bring awareness to that.
The victim of Munchausen or the murderer?
Right.
And what do you want people to know about you?
Quite honestly, I'm starting to feel like they want a perfect victim, and there is no such thing as a perfect victim. In their mind, the perfect victim would have died. And so now that I survived and the perpetrator of the abuse is the one that died, then I'm getting the hate.
The biggest question that lingers is, where does the responsibility lie? Should Gypsy Rose, someone who has been convicted for participating in her mother's murder, be held accountable for attending such an event? Or should we focus on the comedian who chose to exploit this story for laughs? Gypsy's involvement can't be ignored. She knows better than anyone the weight of her story, yet she chooses to engage with it in a way that makes it seem like her mother's death was just a punchline. While Gypsy may not have been the one telling the jokes, her presence and participation to speak volumes. It suggests that she is willing to let her traumatic past be exploited if it means maintaining some level of attention and relevance. On the other hand, the comedian's ethics must also be called into question. There is a line between edgy humor and disrespectful humor, and Ryan Rogers crossed that line. Comedy is meant to challenge, provoke, and sometimes even make us uncomfortable. But it should never glorify or trivialize real-life tragedies, especially something as brutal as murder of a family member. The ethical responsibility is shared between both Gypsy and Rogers. Both should have known better. Rogers for turning a murder into a joke, and Gypsy for standing by and letting it happen.
I couldn't stand there, take their picture, and then have a whole conversation with them. It was too distracting. So I had to quit that. Now things are considerably more heightened. So I just don't see that happening for right now. And everybody's like, she doesn't have a job. What is going on? Okay, by parole, I have to have a job. And my parole officer documentary, the TV show, everything that even my social media, being an influencer, that counts as a job. So as long as I still have that, that is my income. That is my job.
In recent years, it's clear that Gypsy Rose Blanchard has been trying hard to reinvent herself as a social media influencer, but the path she's taking raises more concerns than admiration. Ever since her release from prison, Gypsy has been attempting to build an online presence. Her team, including PR firms like Red Banyan, seems to be going all out to craft her image, but the efforts seem more harmful than helpful. One of the more controversial tactics reportedly used by Gypsy's PR team is employment of bot accounts to target content creators who speak critically of her. These bot accounts spam videos and posts with repetitive comments aiming to stir drama and distract creators from focusing on Gypsy's past actions. Instead of engaging in meaningful discourse or taking accountability, Gypsy's PR strategy appears to involve in silencing critics through artificial means. It's not just unethical, it's outright manipulative. Many creators on platforms like TikTok and YouTube have reportedly receiving copyright claims and strikes from posting content about Gypsy Rose. These strikes do not appear to be random. Rather, they seem like deliberate attempts to control the narrative and stop people from expressing opinions that Gypsy or her team might not like. When legitimate creators who are simply reporting on facts or sharing their views are hit with copyright claims or their content is flooded with bot comments, it shows just how far Gypsy's team is willing to go to maintain her public image. Moreover, it's not secret that Gypsy wants to be a social media influencer. But here's the catch. Being an influencer isn't just about posting content. It requires consistency, transparency, and authenticity. Unfortunately for Gypsy, her attempts to engage with her followers often come across as disingenuous and poorly executed. From poorly filmed fashion hauls to random posts that lack any real purpose or meaning. Her efforts have done little to win over the public. If anything, they have done the opposite. Brands that have tried to partner with Gypsy have faced backlash as well. Any association with her is met with criticism. As people are reminded of her past and the nature of crime, it's become evident that Gypsy's attempt to create an influencer career is not only failing but backfiring. The public isn't forgetting what happened, and no amount of bot accounts or copyright claims will change that. Instead of focusing on silencing critics and manipulating public perception, perhaps Gypsy should be focused on genuine growth and accountability. Gypsy Rose Blanchard has gone worse. From attending a comedy show where her mother's death was reduced to a punchline, to employing questionable PR tactics that silence her critics, it's clear that Gypsy's post-prison life is far from redemption, as many had hoped for. Instead of taking responsibility and learning from her past, Gypsy appears to be doubling down on her need for attention and relevance, no matter the cost. As we continue to watch Gypsy's attempts to reinvent herself, one thing is clear: no amount of social media influence or PR strategy will erase the past. The question is, how much further will Gypsy go to maintain her frame?